I was a reproach among all mine enemies, but especially among my neighbours, and a fear to mine acquaintance, they that did see me without fled from me. Here, the first person I refers to the Messiah Jesus who dies shedding his blood hung on the cross. Also here, enemies refers to the religious leaders of Jerusalem and their band who crucified and killed the Messiah Jesus by opposing him. Also, my neighbours refers to the crowds around Jesus who normally followed the Messiah Jesus and listened to his words, and also cheered at the signs and miracles that the Messiah Jesus performed. Furthermore, here was and among are used in the prophetic perfect tense, representing the certainty of the future. In other words, this word is saying that in the future, the Messiah Jesus will suffer reproach, mockery, and contempt by the adversaries and the crowds who normally cheered and followed him. In short, it means he will suffer all kinds of reproach, mockery, and contempt hung on that cross. Then, what will be the reaction of the people around who look upon the suffering of the Messiah Jesus on the cross? A fear to mine acquaintance, they that did see me without fled from me. Here, if we translate a fear to mine acquaintance literally, it can be said is became an object of fear to those who know me, or there is terror to those who know me. That is, the suffering of the Messiah Jesus on the cross will bring terror and fear to the disciples or close acquaintances who watch and look upon it. In other words, the suffering of the cross is so terrible and cruel that those who watch and look upon it will be terrified and avoid him, for fear that they might become like that as well, or rather, for fear that they might suffer harm if they get involved with the Messiah Jesus. Also here, if we translate they that did see me without fled from me literally, it can be said is those who see me from the outside avoid me. In short, the people who were around the Messiah Jesus, because the suffering the Messiah Jesus was undergoing was so scary and fearful, will not be able to come near the Messiah Jesus and will avoid and distance themselves. Then, how did this word turn out? In Mark 14 verse 54, it says, "And Peter followed him afar off, even into the palace of the high priest, and he sat with the servants, and warmed himself at the fire." Here, afar off well shows the psychological state of Peter, who loved Jesus as a disciple of Jesus, but because of the fear and terror of death, could not come near Jesus and had to be far away. Also in Matthew 26:69-70, it says, "Now Peter sat without in the palace, and a damsel came unto him, saying, Thou also wast with Jesus of Galilee. But he denied before them all, saying, I know not what thou sayest." We can see that Peter, because of the fear and terror that he himself might also be executed like Jesus, could not join in the suffering of Jesus and was rather denying Jesus. In short, we can confirm that the word of the psalm in today's text was fulfilled and accomplished exactly as it was through Peter, or rather, through the disciples.